principle. But don't say, hate is my enemy. What did it say? What's that word? Hate is my enemy. I got to fight it day and night. And what else is the other line? Love is the only weapon. Shit! Bullshit! Martin Luther King died with love. Kennedy died talking about something he couldn't even understand, some kind of generalized love, and he never even backed it up. He shut down. Bullshit! Love is the only weapon with which I got to fight. I got a hell of a lot of weapons to fight. I got my claws, I got compasses, I got guns, I got dynamite, I got a hell of a lot to fight. I'll fight, I'll fight, I will fight, I will fight, I will fight, I will.
The attack on Tokyo was a terrorist attack. There were about a dozen people killed and thousands injured.
I first met Kyoko Asahara in 1987 and became a monk, now Om Shinrikyo.
オウム真理教の教えを体現するためには
Asahara described himself as the reincarnation of Buddha, and he was really good at recruiting. He knew how to talk to the young people.
そしてもうあっという間に引き込まれていったっていう感じで。
They charged huge amounts of money. It's just a very successful business model, starting your own religion. In 1990, there was a general election in Japan.
朝原はですね、本当に当選するというふうに思ってたみたいなんですよね。
It was a disaster.
Imagine you're a cult leader, you're the second coming of God. It's a little hard to lose a local election.
考えられることは大きなトリックがあった可能性はあると。よって国家、警察、マスコミ、これ全てこれからも敵に回っていくだろう。
Holmes sees the apocalypse coming, and they want to arm themselves. What do you arm yourselves with? Weapons of mass destruction.
He prophesied that Armageddon will come, so he's going to actually make Armageddon happen.
The attack on the subway was a strike at the heart of the Japanese bureaucracy.
Japan's police chief, who has been leading the investigation, has been shot.
All of these events, when you wound them into one, just created this incredible sense of apprehension and fear. We just didn't see it coming.
Hello there, how are you all doing? When it comes to indoctrination, there is one thing that does it better than anything else. And that's what you could call a cult of personality around an individual that's doing the indoctrination. You see this most often in religious cults more than anything else. There is a strong sort of religious leader. He's very charismatic. He's very authoritative. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes attractive in a sense to certain individuals. And they have but this is mainly a product of the confidence that they show and the authority and the strength. That's where that attractiveness comes from. And very often the first to be indoctrinated by the predominantly male sort of cult leaders are women, naturally. They have that sexual attraction. The younger they are, sometimes they see them, if they're an older sort of cult leader, they see them as a father figure. These people are often have often gone without a father for quite some time. Jim Jones is a prime example. Everyone knows who he is. The guy who ran the Heaven's Gate cult, Shoka Akahara in Japan, is an excellent example of a very charismatic, very sort of intoxicating and hypnotic cult leader, religious speaker. that is still a problematic cult, even though Shoko's been dead for 15 years, I think, 10, 15 years. His cult is still massive, they just changed the name. But he drew in some extremely intelligent sort of individuals, all, like scientists, nuclear scientists, which was troubling, chemists, biologists, you name it, computer technicians, yada yada yada. This is the power that a cult leader can have. Even though that guy was pretty uneducated, to be fair, he could speak with an authority that drew people in. This concept, this cult leader concept, was something that the intel world and the psychological warfare world picked up on pretty early, naturally. So when they developed what is essentially the conspiracy movement, yes, it's engineered. It comes out of the, again, the Information Research Department at Tavistock. That's where it originates. When they saw this cult of personality sort of thing, they quickly learned, after putting certain individuals into the public sphere, that they weren't getting any traction because they came across as too engineered. Yeah. So during the 60s, 70s, 80s, Tavistock began developing and experimenting and researching the ways in which cult-like behaviour, shall we say, are formed around certain individuals. And they started off with celebrity. Everyone knows about the Beatles as a product of Tavistock. It came out of the Tavistock Institute. They engineered their appearance a certain way, developed their music a certain way, and then let it loose on the British public to see what happened. And it took off. And it was here that they started to notice certain elements within society that would immediately latch on to them. Often around just one. But all of them were a package, but there was always one that they would inextricably just be drawn to. And they'd circle around that one component, and then the rest would be also within their sphere, and they would vehemently protect them no matter what they did. They would essentially defend them to the hill. Yeah? The thing with the cult of personality is that it is not only is it the most effective way of indoctrinating people, it's also the quickest. It's very effective, very efficient, very fast. But in religious cults and in celebrity, it's quite easy, yeah. This cult-like behaviour, but they won't. With celebrity, they don't get the same sort of religious zeal, I suppose, yeah, as they would with a religious cult leader. There's something in the spirit that grasps them and won't let go, yeah. And it's probably, again, in many cases, the lack of a father. They see them as a father figure and they hold them as that father figure. It's also a form of hero worship in a way. People don't like seeing the heroes torn down and will defend them as just like they would their own child often. So the IRD knew they needed to sort of transfer that sort of religious sort of zeal from the religious element to a more secular and mainstream element. And when you're controlling information, which is what a lot of these cults of personality do, yeah, this kind of thing is goldmine. Yeah, magnifique. Because you can get a hold of it, information coming out. Yeah, you can get hold of it very quickly and get it dismissed even quicker. Yeah, depending on the person that is giving that information, which is what they were learning. So when they created the conspiracy sphere, they started off with people that weren't organic in any way, shape or form. They were just dropped, and it didn't work. So then they realised they needed backstories. They needed target audience. They needed to specify, to tailor, to engineer particular individuals to a certain mindset, yeah? Or a broader mindset, shall we say. One of the most successful, probably the most successful, really, because he's been at it a long time, it's David Icke. In the 90s, I think it was 1992, after having a very good career in broadcasting, after I think it was an illness in his back, yeah, some sort of condition in his back that stopped him from being a footballer. He was also quite a good footballer before that. Goalkeeper or defender, I can't remember. But he was a footballer anyway. And he played for Leicester City, I think, if I remember right. He then moved into sports broadcasting. And then from sports broadcasting, he moved, because he went to the BBC, he moved into politics. He joined the Green Party. He was a very active member of the Green Party, and actually an MP for the Isle of Wight, I believe, where he lives now. So this would, in normal circumstances, make him very sort of incompatible. It would make him ideal in an operational sense, yeah, because he's already part of the system, yeah. So he knows what he needs to do, and he knows his job, and he will do it as he's shown. He's been a politician, he's been a broadcaster. So they needed a way of, one, giving sceptical people a reason to discredit him, give a certain block of society a reason to feel sorry for him and listen to him, and another offshoot of that sector of society who would listen to him because of a connection to him. Their conspiracy movement was failing, yeah, before David Icke came along. And when he went on Wogan, saying he was basically Jesus, this made the vast majority of society completely dismiss him. But it also engineered his backstory of coming back from the brink. He was once part of the system and is no more. And now he can join the rest of us in the pursuit of truth. Icke was one of the first to start using quite alien concepts, yeah, no pun intended, quite alien concepts to the vast majority of the conspiracy theory that was in the UK. It was quite well established. In the US, it really sort of took off over there, but in the UK, we're a lot more, I don't know, intelligent maybe. Sorry, you American guys, but we're a lot less religious, I think. I think that's probably what it was. And these concepts, these, quite frankly, sort of oriental concepts of spirit, of spirituality, of religion, he put across in such a way that engaged you, yeah, drew you in. there's that cult of personality again, you see. He was already a media personality, so he knew how to do that. And slowly he began to rise up the ranks, yeah? A rise in prominence in the conspiracy world, not just in the UK, where he was still quite relatively unknown. He wasn't taking off that well. It wasn't until he met Jordan Maxwell, someone I met myself. Incredible man, extraordinary mind. It wasn't until he met him and Jordan invited him over to the US to speak that he began to start making a bit of headway, generating a following. I have the feeling that if it wasn't for that, they would have axed David as a project. Simple as. Because it wasn't really working over here in the UK. Despite the UK doing sort of anti-propaganda against him, featuring him, saying, look, this is a guy who believed he was Jesus, now he's talking about the royal family being lizards. That usually works in the American sort of sphere. It doesn't over here. Again, religion. It's always religion. So, when Jordan got him over to the US and David started speaking, he started getting that following, and he abandoned Jordan Maxwell. Now, before that happened, Jordan Maxwell was on record quite a few times turning around and saying, I do not trust this man. I brought him over here, I gave him a few ideas of concepts, and he's run with them. Doesn't credit me for telling him this information or giving him this information. And there's something funny about him that I just can't quite put my finger on, he says. Over the years, as David's grew more and more popular, he's added to his repertoire. He's sort of changes his angle on lizards to being a, rather than actual physical sort of shape-shifting, yeah, or mutating in front of people's eyes, it's more of a spiritual sort of thing, yeah. The spirit of these reptiles comes out of them. Talks about the archons a lot, which is Gnosticism. Talks about other concepts. That there are no viruses is one of them. AI, again, religion, spirituality, all of that. He does this and gets into his followers' heads through a very simple method. And it's just basically bombarding people over a number of hours. That's essentially it. That's all you need to do. So very often in the US, his lectures were 10 hours long. And he would cover everything from start to finish. Yeah? From the beginning of the universe or before, beyond. He would, like I said, draw people in. See, after 10 hours, of sitting there on your ass, watching this guy speaking away in a very sort of nice, sort of rhythmic voice. He's got a very pleasant voice to listen to when he's not shouting at people. He's very engaging, like I said, very amenable, very knowledgeable as well. To speak like that for 10 hours and for most of it, 90% of it, to be actually true, it's a decent feat. But doing that alone does get into people's heads, into the subconscious. It may, if it doesn't get into the conscious mind, it will get into the subconscious and it will stay there. And that's the seed that grows the tree in your mind. It doesn't shatter your inner core, yeah, like a cult leader would. It's more subtle than that. Worms his way in, so to speak, which is why he's been around for so long. And what many sort of people who followed in his footsteps haven't quite got a handle on, yeah, or been able to replicate in any sort of meaningful way that works. But he does change with the tide. Sometimes he's the pioneer of that tide, yeah. Sometimes he's not. but he still latches onto a good story that will make a good psyop, that will draw your attention away from whatever it is that is needed. The thing with these cults of personality like David Icke is they're just left to their own devices. They have to be. Their rising popularity, their rising following has to be organic. Yeah, it has to appear organic, should I say. It can have the occasional boost, nudge, whatever. Yeah, but it has to come across as completely natural to the wider public. Although a lot of us are stupid, the majority of us aren't, right? We can smell a rat. So when someone seems engineered, very often they are. And David was able to camouflage that engineering. His intelligence ties, shall we say. You can tell he's intel, or at least part of this, the psyop world. Largely by the subject matter. His methods of disseminating information. His writing, which we'll get to in a different episode, because there's other people I want to cover when we're talking about writing. There's his speech, his engineered background, everything. I mean, people turn around and say, well, he did a humiliation ritual when he started off. It wasn't a humiliation ritual, right? Yes, you may be a Mason, but no, it wasn't a humiliation ritual. It was designed to whittle out a portion of the population that they knew wouldn't take to him. It gave them an immediate reason to dismiss him without outing who he was. It also gives them plausible deniability, yeah, and him. Well, it was mad. It's nothing to do with humiliation. Although he probably did feel humiliated having to do it. It was a necessary part of his backstory, of his cover. Like many other influences that we may cover later on, David does tell a lot of truth, as I said. It's necessary. It's necessary because you need, even though a certain sector of the population, yeah, that you're targeting will just take to him, end of, there is a portion of those still that will look into what he's saying to check it. Skeptical types like me that look into the information to see what he's actually talking about. Is that right or not? And that convinces them more further. So this is, again, 95% truth, 10% lies. If you don't know the nature behind that concept, because it does sound very strange, 95% truth, 10% lies, that's 105%. No, it's not. Those who've been here before, right, you know what it is. Think outside the box. What does it represent? It's not a mathematical equation, but this is what Icke imposes, or not imposes, what he employs, shall we say, and he sticks to that to the letter. There's certain narrative beats that are inside that he has to, for his job, he has to insert, but he'll sprinkle it lightly. One of those things is the Israel question that everyone and his mother is asking right now, while turning around and saying, it's the ones you can't criticise that are the ones that are in control. Well, okay, you're criticising Israel now. You've got 8 million followers, 70 million views, $100 million made from that it's the Jews' fault. You see how that doesn't stack up? This is another thing with indoctrination. George Orwell said it best, doublespeak. You say one thing on one hand and then a completely contradictory thing on the other. Both of them can't gel together, yet you believe both. And none of them are true. She's how to get away with that, you see. So yeah, Ike was the first. He was then followed by, well, one of his contemporaries at the time was Bill Cooper, who very evidently went off the reservation towards the end of his life. He began to, I don't know whether he had a crisis of conscience or what, but he began to give the game away, telling people what the actual thing was. He used the excuse that he was possibly used. He was shown the information he was giving out because he was a former signals officer, yeah, signals intelligence officer in the US military. It's not DIA, what is it? Oh no, Navy, sorry. It was Navy, he was ONI, Officer of Naval Intelligence. ONSI, sorry. Officer of Naval Signal Intelligence, yeah, which is basically communications. And he had to certify top secret documents. That was his job. And he saw lots and lots and lots of stuff. And that's all he said. And he said that he had a feeling that people were putting them across his desk on purpose when none of them were real. And that could have been the case. Yeah? But he was also an active agent for a very long while. And then when he went off the reservation, they killed him. Because he was extremely popular, very influential. And since then, they've tried discrediting him loads. He inspired Alex Jones, allegedly, but he hated him. He even called him out several times as a counter-information agent. Nowadays, we have very obvious, and I think it's because right now people have had enough of authority figures. Really have. And they won't accept anything from those figures, to their detriment. So I always say you need to listen to shells because they tell you a lot of truth. Yeah? But you need to have the wherewithal to at least check what they're saying and know how to spot when they're lying. Something else we'll cover later on. Now, well, agent's a wrong word, shall I say. They're assets, yeah? They're on the payroll. Their handler will be an active case officer, yeah? Even though they may have a job that doesn't portray that, they will still be an active case officer. They will still be an active member of the CIA. Tucker Carlson's a prime example. And we know this is the case because of his interview with Putin, Vladimir Putin, when he basically outed him right in front of his face.
The backing of whom? With the backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand. We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although, it is a serious organization. I understand. My former vis-a-vis in the sense that I served in the first main directorate, Soviet Union's intelligence service.
Well, that was CIA, wasn't he says. Didn't you apply for the CIA? Did you ever join? Tucker didn't respond. He just threw his papers down. You can identify a counter-operations asset by several factors. Rapid rise to power, obviously fabricated backstory, manufactured boosting, seeming an inexplicable sort of ability to never get censored for what they say. That's not always the case, but sometimes an operation requires that, and someone gets a large enough following and you want people to believe a particular idea, you don't censor them. Which is why there is a very noticeable push against Israel. I don't know if you notice it against Jewish people. Because they're getting ready to throw their scapegoats under a bus. So figures like Candace Owens, who appeared from nowhere, married an English lord, was very good friends with Charlie Kirk, another prominent conservative, unlikely asset as well. We don't know though. He's very biblically focused, which goes against their sort of the raison d'etre, I suppose. Call it, maybe? Perhaps. That's not. I don't think. Their particular belief system, shall we say, we don't like it. Even though the CIA's use of the clergy is ubiquitous. Use the clergy a long time, mainly Catholic, because Catholic priests, Jesuits. A lot of the upper crust of the CIA are themselves Jesuit, and Mormon is another one. They've infiltrated every sort of aspect of the Bible thumping North America for 70 years now, over 70 years. All their anti-war movements. I've covered this before with Ian Carroll, whose father was one of those religious leaders that were CIA case officers, the leadership of those religious anti-war movements that preceded the hippie movement. He admitted this on camera. So yeah, again, these people, Ian Carroll, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, have very strong personalities. Some of them have very established backgrounds like Tucker, so are easy to sort of fall in behind. Candace is a bit different, her background, same with Ian Carroll. Both of them have very sort of murky backgrounds, obviously hiding something. In Ian Carroll's case, it's the fact that he's from an elite family. Look at the Carroll family, John Carroll and Charles Carroll. Both of them appear on the Declaration of Independence, found in Minnesota. Yeah, very prominent, very Jesuit. Two job prospects when you're in the Carroll family: military or intelligence, clergy, Catholic or otherwise. That's all he ever did. So his entire background's bullshit. He wasn't a teacher. He says he hasn't got a degree or a GED or anything like that, which is their equivalent of an NVQ in the UK. So he couldn't have been a teacher, couldn't have been a teaching assistant in any school. He's not qualified. You still need some sort of degree or an equivalent sort of qualification, and he didn't have it. So that was bullshit. And several other things about him. Both him and Candice are former Democrats. Candice Owens, her background is completely scrubbed. Her marriage to George Farmer, MI6, Knight of Malta, former Bullingdon Club president. Look them up, they're fun. She married him after 18 days. She's so obviously CIA. It's people who don't know this or don't see this they are brainwashed, yeah. I would say they're dumb people. Some of them aren't. Not all of them. The vast majority are just idiots. Completely sucked in. And she has a very zealous sort of attack dog structure. If you think of the Catholic Church, right? The Catholic Church has the Pope that everyone rallies round, yeah? Below him are the cardinals that keep the bishops in line. The bishops keep the clergy in line, and the clergy keep the people in line. And each level has their own attack dogs that will go after individuals that drop out of line. Yeah? Candice is the same. And we'll get to her next. I've already done a series on her, but there's a lot more that we can cover to do with the PSYWAR element. Yeah?